Alright, hello everyone. Hope you all had a fantastic Tuesday. Today we are reading H.P. Lovecraft's The Festival, read in 1923. Wasn't there something else I was going to say before I started? I don't remember. Must not have been important. Let's see. Oh, yeah. Channel News that started Helldiver's Quest yesterday uploaded a video instead of live streaming it. I am planning to, because I don't like how that video turned out, because I think it lacks the energy and the fun that I usually have when reading stuff live stream. Monday, when it's time for the second update of the quest, I will reread the first part before the second part, just to have the first part read on live stream, where I think it'll be better than the recorded version. But let's get into Lovecraft tonight. The Festival, with some Latin. I took 3 years of Latin between middle school and high school, and I learned nothing. But let's see if I can remember how to pronounce it right. Viciunt demones uque non sunt sectamen casi sint conspiciende omnibus exhibient, from the Lactator. According to Google Translate, that means demons make things that are not, yet so as if they were to be seen by men. I think the parsing on that is a little sus, but that's a direct Google translation. Anyways, I'm sure that's a good tone setter there for where we're going to go. I have not read this story before, so this is all new to me. And I have been looking forward to it because I really enjoyed the color out of space. Okay. I was far from home, and the spell of the eastern sea was upon me. In the twilight, I heard it pounding on the rocks, and I knew it lay just over the hill where the twisting willows writhed against the clearing sky in the first stars of the evening. And because my fathers had called me to the old town beyond, I pushed on through the shallow, new-fallen snow along the road that soared lonely up to where Aldebaran twinkled among the trees, on toward the very ancient town I had never seen but often dreamed of. It was the Yuletide that men call Christmas, though they know in their hearts it is older than Bethlehem and Babylon, older than Memphis and mankind. It was the Yuletide, and I had come at last to the ancient sea town where my people had dwelt and kept festival in the elder time, when festival was forbidden, where also they had commanded their sons to keep festival once every century, that the memory of primal secrets might not be forgotten. Mine were an old people, and were old even when this land was settled 300 years before, and they were strange, because they had come as dark furtive folk from opiate southern gardens of orchids. Gardens and orchids? No, orchid is a flower. That's right. Opiate southern gardens of orchids. I don't know why I had trouble parsing that. And spoke in another tongue before they learnt the tongue of the blue-eyed fishers. And now they were scattered and shared only the rituals of mysteries that none living could understand. I was the only one who came back that night to the old fishing town as legend bade, for only the poor and the lonely remember. I can already kind of see where this is going. What little I know of Lovecraft lore. I think blue-eyed fishers is the key wording there. Then beyond the hill's crest, I saw Kingsport outspread frostily in the gloaming, snowy Kingsport with its ancient vanes and steeples, ridgepoles and chimney pots, wharves and small bridges, willow trees and graveyards, endless labyrinths of steep, narrow, crooked streets, and dizzy church-crowned central peak that time durst? Kinda sounds like a word. Time durst not touch. Ceaseless mazes of colonial houses piled and scattered at all angles and levels like a child's disordered blocks. Antiquity hovering on gray wings over winter-whitened gables and gambrel roofs. Fanlight in small paned windows, one by one, gleaming out in the cold dusk to join Orion and the archaic stars, and against rotting wharves the sea pounded, the secretive, immemorial sea out of which the people had come in the elder time. Beside the road at its crest, a still higher summit rose, bleak and windswept, and I saw that it was the burying ground where black gravestones sucked ghoulishly through the snow like the decaying fingernails of a gigantic corpse. The printless road was very lonely, and sometimes I thought I heard a distant horrible creaking as if a gibbet in the wind. The hell is a gibbet? They had hanged 4 kinsmen of mine for witchcraft in 1692, but I did not know just where. As the road wound down the seaward slope, I listened for the merry sounds of a village at evening, but did not hear them. Then I thought of the season, and felt that these old Puritan folk might well have Christmas customs strange to me, and full of silent hearthside prayer. So after that, I did not listen for merriment or look for wayfarers, but kept on down past the hushed lighted farmhouses and shadowy stone walls, where the signs of ancient shops and sea taverns creaked in the salt breeze, and the grotesque knockers of pillared doorways glistened along deserted, unpaved lanes in the light of little curtained windows. I had seen maps of the town and knew where to find the home of my people. It was told that I should be known and welcome, for village legend lives long, so I hastened through back street to Circle Court and across the fresh snow on the one full flagstone pavement in the town to where Green Lane leads off behind the market house. The old map still held good, and I had no trouble, though at Arkham they must have lied when they said the trolleys ran to this place, since I saw not a wire overhead. Snow would have hid the rails in any case. I was glad I had chosen to walk, for the white village had seemed very beautiful from the hill, and now I was eager to knock at the door of my people. The 7th house, on the left in Green Lane, with an ancient peaked roof and jutting second story, all built before 1650. Excuse me. Excuse me. There were lights inside the house when I came upon it, and I saw from the diamond window panes that it must have been kept very close to its antique state. The upper part overhung the narrow grass-grown street and nearly met the overhanging part of the house opposite, so that I was almost in a tunnel, with the low stone doorstep wholly free from snow. There was no sidewalk, but many houses had high doors reached by double flights of steps with iron railings. It was an odd scene, and because I was strange to New England, I had never known its like before. Though it pleased me, I would have relished it better if there had been footprints in the snow and people in the streets, and a few windows without drawn curtains. I feel like Lovecraft must have seen an actual house like that, with a double overhanging over the street to make a tunnel. That's very specific and cool. When I sounded the archaic iron knocker, I was half afraid. Some fear had been gathering in me, perhaps because of the strangeness of my heritage, and the bleakness of the evening, and the queerness of the silence in that aged town of curious customs. And when my knock was answered, I was fully afraid, because I had not heard any footsteps before the door creaked open. But I was not afraid long, for the gowned, slippered old man at the doorway had a bland face that reassured me. And though he made signs that he was dumb, he wrote a quaint and ancient welcome with the stylus and wax tablet he carried. He beckoned me into a low, candlelit room with massive exposed rafters and dark, stiff, sparse furniture of the 17th century. Past was vivid there, for not an attribute was missing. There was a cavernous fireplace and a spinning wheel at which a bent old woman in a loose wrapper and deep poke bonnet sat back toward me, silently spinning despite the festive season. An indefinite dampness seemed upon the place, and I marveled that no fire should be blazing. The high-backed settle faced the row of curtained windows at the left, and seemed to be occupied, though I was not sure. I did not like everything about what I saw, and felt again the fear I had had. This fear grew stronger from what had before lessened it. I don't know why that's hard for me to read. From what had before lessened it. For the more I looked at the old man's bland face, the more its very blandness terrified me. The eyes never moved. The skin was too like wax. Finally, I was sure it was not a face at all, but a fiendishly cunning mask. But the flabby hands, curiously gloved, wrote genially on the tablet and told me I must wait a while before I could be led to the place of the festival. Pointing to a chair, table, and pile of books, the old man now left the room, and when I sat down to read, I saw that the books were hoary and moldy, and that they included Ode Morster's Wild, Marvels of Science, terrible Sadducismus? I'm going to say Sadducismus, Triumphatus, of Joseph Glanville, published in 1681. And the shocking Demonolatreia of Remigius? Printed in 1595 at Lyons. And worst of all, the unmentionable Necronomicon of the mad Arab Abdul al-Hazred in Olas, Warmus's forbidden Latin translation. A book which I had never seen, but of which I had heard monstrous things whispered. No one spoke to me, but I could hear the creaking of signs in the wind outside, and the whir of the wheel as the bonneted old woman continued her silent spinning. I thought the room, and the books, and the people very morbid and disquieting, but because an old tradition of my father's had summoned me to strange feastings, I resolved to expect queer things. So I tried to read, and soon became tremblingly absorbed by something I found in that accursed... You're just gonna sit down and read the Necronomicon? Dumbass. Absorbed by something I found in that accursed Necronomicon. A thought in the legend, too hideous for sanity or consciousness. But I disliked it when I fancied I heard the closing of one of the windows that the settle faced. I don't know why he's calling the woman settle. Maybe that's like an old-timey phrase for a housekeeper? I don't know. That the settle faced, as if it had been stealthily opened. It had seemed to follow a whirring that was not of the old woman's spinning wheel. This was not much, though, for the old woman was spinning very hard, and the aged clock had been striking. After that, I lost the feeling that there were persons on the settle. Is the settle a person or a thing? Oh. And was reading intently and shudderingly when the old man came back booted and dressed in a loose antique costume, and sat down on that very bench, so that I could not see him. I was certainly nervous, waiting, and the blasphemous book in my hands made it doubly so. When 11 struck, however, the old man stood up, glided to the massive carved chest in the corner, and got 2 hooded cloaks, one of which he donned, and the other of which he draped around the old woman, who was ceasing her monotonous spinning. They both started for the outer door, the woman lamely creeping, and the old man, after picking up the very book I had been reading, beckoned me as he drew his hood over that unmoving face or mask. Pretty cool so far. Nothing's really happened yet, but it's dropping a lot of very important names just by the books alone. It's very funny to me that just like some old... that might be a spoiler, but I guess I don't know the story either, and I already kind of figured out that the old fish people just casually have the Necronomicon laying around their coffee table. We went out into the moonless and torturous network of that incredibly ancient town. Went out as the lights in the curtained windows disappeared one by one, and the dog star... What's the dog star? And the dog star leered at the throng of cowed, cloaked figures that poured silently from every doorway and formed monstrous processions up this street and that, past the creaking signs and the antediluvian gables. I know how to pronounce antediluvian, but I don't know what it means. The thatched roofs and diamond-paned windows, threading I can say antediluvian, but not precipitous. Precipitous lanes where decaying houses overlapped and crumbled together, gliding across open courts and churchyards where the bobbing lanterns made eldritch drunken constellations. Maybe it is lanterns. Amid these hushed throngs, I followed my voiceless guides, jostled by elbows that seemed preternaturally soft, and pressed by chests and stomachs that seemed abnormally pulpy. But seeing seeing never a face and hearing never a word. Up, up, up the eerie column slithered, and I saw that all the travelers were converging as they flowed near a sort of focus of crazy alleys at the top of a high hill in the center of town. Oh, my neck there. Center of town, where perched a great white church. I had seen it from the road's crest when I looked at Kingsport in the new dusk. It had made me shiver because Aldebaran had seemed to balance itself a moment on the ghostly spire. There was an open space around the church, partly a churchyard with spectral shafts, and partly a half-paved square swept nearly bare of snow by the wind, and lined with unwholesomely archaic houses, having peaked roofs and overhanging gables. Death fires danced over the tombs, revealing gruesome vistas, through queerly failing to cast any shadows. Past the churchyard, where there were no houses, I could see over the hill summit and watch the glimmer of stars on the harbor, though the town was invisible in the dark. Only once in a while, a lantern bobbed horribly through the serpentine alleys on its way to overtake the throng that was now slipping speechlessly into the church. I waited till the crowd had oozed into the back doorway, and till all the stragglers had followed. The old man was pulling at my sleeve, but I was determined to be the last. Then I finally went, the sinister man and the old spinning woman before me, crossing the threshold into that swarming temple of unknown darkness. I turned once to look at the outside world as the churchyard races are making this one hard. Phosphorescence. Fuck. The illumination cast a sickly glow on the hilltop pavement, and as I did so, I shuddered. For though the wind had not left much snow, a few patches did remain on the path near the door, and in that fleeting backward look, it seemed to my troubled eyes that they bore no mark of passing feet, not even mine. The church was scarce, lighted by all the lanthorns that had entered it, for most of the throng had already vanished. They had streamed up the aisle between the high white pews to the trapdoor of the vault, which yawned loathsomely open just before the pulpit, and were now squirming noiselessly in. I followed dumbly down the foot-worn steps into the dank, suffocating crypt. The tale of that sinuous line of night marchers seemed very horrible, and as I saw them wriggling into a venerable tomb, they seemed more horrible still. Then I noticed that the tomb's floor had an aperture down which the throng was sliding, and in a moment we were all descending an ominous staircase of rough-hewn stone, a narrow spiral staircase, damp and peculiar odorous. That wound endlessly down into the bowels of the hill, past monotonous walls of dripping stone blocks and crumbling mortar. It was a silent, shocking descent, and I observed, after a horrible interval, that the walls and steps were changing in nature, as if chiseled out of solid rock. What mainly troubled me was that the myriad footfalls made no sound and set up no echoes. After more aeons of descent, I saw some side passages or burrows leading from unknown recesses of blackness to this shaft of nighted mystery. Soon, they became excessively numerous, like impious catacombs of nameless menace, and their pungent odor of decay grew quite unbearable. I knew we must have passed down through the mountain and beneath the earth of Kingsport itself, and I shivered that a town should be so aged and maggoty with subterraneous evil. Then I saw the lurid shimmering of a pale light, and I heard the insidious lapping of sunless waters. Again I shivered, for I did not like the things that the night had brought, and wished bitterly that no forefather had summoned me to this primal rite. As the steps in the passage grew broader, I heard another sound, the thin whining mockery of a feeble flute, and suddenly there spread out before me the boundless vista of an inner world, a vast fungus shore lit by belching column of steep greenish flame and washed by a wide, oily river that flowed from the abysses frightful and unsuspected to join the blackest gulfs of immemorial ocean. Busting out the big words. Not really that big. Fainting and gasping, I looked at that unhallowed Erebus of titan toadstools, leprous fire, and slimy water, and saw the cloaked throngs forming a semicircle around the blazing pillar. It was the Yule rite, older than man and fated to survive him, the primal rite of the solstice and of spring's promise beyond the snows. The rite of fire and evergreen, light and music. And in the Stygian grotto, I saw them do the rite and adore the sick pillar of flame, and throw into water handfuls gouged out of vicious vegetation which glittered green in the chlorotic glare. Wouldn't that be like poison gas throwing chlorine into fire? The hell are they doing? I saw this, and I saw something amorphously squatted far away in the light, piping noisomely on a flute. And as the thing piped, I thought I heard nauseous muffled flutterings in the foetid darkness where I could not see. But what frightened me most was that flaming column, spouting volcanically from depths profound and inconceivable, casting no shadows as healthy flame should, and coating the nitrous stone above with a nasty, venomous verdigris. For in all that seething combustion no warmth lay, but only the clamminess of death and corruption. The man who had brought me now squirmed to a point directly beside the hideous flame, and made stiff ceremonial motions to the semicircle he faced. At certain stages of the ritual, they did groveling obeisance, especially when he held above his head the abhorrent Necronomicon he had taken with him. And I shared all the obeisances because I had been summoned to this festival by the writings of my forefathers. Then the old man made a signal to the half-seen flute player in the darkness, which player thereupon changed his feeble drone to a scarce louder drone in another key, precipitating it, as it did, so a horror unthinkable and unexpected. At this horror, I sank nearly to the lichened earth, transfixed with a dread not of this nor any world, but only of the mad spaces between the stars. Out of the unimaginable blackness, beyond the gangrenous glare of that cold flame, out of the Tartaran leagues through which the oily river rolled uncanny, unheard, and unsuspected, there flopped rhythmically a horde of tame, trained, hybrid winged things that no sound eye could ever wholly grasp, or sound brain ever wholly remember. They were not altogether crows, nor moles, nor buzzards, nor ants, nor vampire bats, nor decomposed human beings, but something I cannot and must not recall. They flopped limply along, half with their webbed feet and half with their membranous wings, and as they reached the throng of celebrants, the cowled figure seized and mounted them, and rode off one by one along the reaches of that unlighted river. I thought that was going somewhere different. Somewhere way weirder. And rode off one by one along the reaches of that unlighted river into pits and galleries of panic, where poisoned springs feed frightful and undiscoverable cataracts. The old spinning woman had gone with the throng, and the old man remained only because I had refused when he motioned me to seize an animal to ride like the rest. I saw when I staggered to my feet that the amorphous flute player had rolled out of sight, but that two of the beasts were patiently standing by. As I hung back, the old man produced his stylus and tablet and wrote that he was the true deputy of my fathers who had founded the Yule worship in this ancient place, that it had been decreed I should come back, and that the most secret mysteries were yet to be performed. He wrote this in a very ancient hand, and when I still hesitated, he pulled from his loose robes a seal ring and a watch, both with my family arms, to prove that he was what he said. But it was a hideous proof, because I knew from old papers that the watch had been buried with my great-great-great-great-great-great-grandfather in 1698. Presently, the old man drew back his hood and pointed to the family resemblance in his face, but I only shuddered, because I was sure that the face was merely a devilish waxen mask. The flopping animals were now scratching restlessly at the lichens, and I saw that the old man was nearly as restless himself. When one of the things began to waddle and edge away, he turned quickly to stop it, so that the suddenness of his motion dislodged the wax mask from what should have been his head. And then, because that nightmare's position barred me from the stone staircase down which we had come, I flung myself into the oily underground river that bubbled somewhere to the caves of the sea. Flung myself into that putrescent juice of the earth's inner horrors before the madness of my screams could bring down upon me all the eternal legions of these pest-gulfs might conceal. Okay, I added a word or two in there that wasn't there. At the hospital, they told me I had been found half frozen in Kingsport Harbor at dawn, clinging to the drifting spar that accident sent to save me. They told me I had taken the wrong fork of the hill road the night before and fallen over the cliffs at Orange Point, a thing they deduced from prints found in the snow. There was nothing I could say because everything was wrong. Everything was wrong, with a broad window showing a sea of roofs, which only about 1 in 5 was ancient, and the sound of trolleys and motors in the streets below. They insisted that this was Kingsport, and I could not deny it. When I went delirious at hearing that the hospital stood near the old churchyard on Central Hill, they sent me to St. Mary's Hospital in Arkham, where I could have better care. I liked it there, for the doctors were broad-minded and even lent me their influence in obtaining a carefully sheltered copy of Alhazred's objectable Necronomicon from the library of Miskatonic University. They said something about a psychosis and agreed I had better get any harassing obsessions off my mind. So I read again that hideous chapter, and shuddered doubly because it was indeed not new to me. I had seen it before. Let footprints tell what they might, and where it was I had seen it were best forgotten. There is no one in waking hours who could remind me of it, but my dreams are filled with terror because of phrases I dare not quote. I dare quote only one paragraph, put into such English as I can make from awkward low Latin. The nethermost caverns, wrote the mad Arab, are not for the fathoming of eyes that see, for their marvels are strange and terrific. First the ground where dead thoughts live new and oddly bodied, and evil the mind that is held by no head. Wisely did Ibn Shkabao, okay. Ibn Shkabao say that happy is the tomb where no wizard hath lain, and happy the town at night whose wizards are all ashes. For it is of old rumor that the soul of the devil brought haste not from his charnel clay, but fats and instructs, the very worm that gnaws, till out of corruption horrid life springs, and the dull scavengers of earth wax crafty to vex it, and so monstrous to plague it. Great holes secretly are digged where the earth pores ought to suffice, and things have learnt to walk that ought to crawl. Alright, that was The Festival by H.P. Lovecraft. That is a bit of a short story, but it is good. I enjoyed that. That went places I didn't quite expect. I assumed that all the cultists were fish people. Maybe they are, but I think it's implied at the end that the old man was actually his ancestor that was hanged in, what was it, 1698? Where is that? Here. Yeah, it would have been 16... So it said it was some 1692, when his great grandfather was hanged, or whatever. And I suspect that it's implied that the old man that met him is that same person brought back to life, because first the ground where dead thoughts live new and oddly bodied. I think that line implies that the old man is in fact the undead ancestor. And it is entirely unimplied what happened at the rest of the festival. Was it? Maybe the rest of this Necronomicon quote implies it, what they're doing. But I don't have enough brain cells left to work to think about that. So that is the end of tonight's reading. Tomorrow, video. Yeah, it's Wednesday. I'm gonna play video tomorrow. Haven't decided what yet. Have a few options. But I will see you all tomorrow, Wednesday night at 1:30 a.m. Technically, Thursday morning at 1:30 a.m. Scheduling is complicated. But see you all tomorrow. Have a fantastic Wednesday. Peace.